I used to think working the night shift at a gas station would be easy. Quiet, a little boring, but nothing too bad. After all, how much could really happen between midnight and sunrise? I learned the answer on a cold February night, alone in a near-empty station off Highway 41. The store was small, just 2 aisles, a counter, and a back storage room. The only people who stopped by at this hour were truckers, exhausted travelers, or the occasional weirdo passing through. It was almost 3 a.m. when I noticed the car, a black sedan parked at Pump 3. I only noticed it because it had been there for too long, almost half an hour. The driver hadn't come inside. He hadn't pumped gas, just sitting there. I checked the security monitors. The car was running, headlights off, tinted windows, too dark to see inside. Maybe he was sleeping? I didn't want to go outside, but I figured I should check. I stepped out into the freezing air, pulled my hoodie tighter, and knocked on the driver's window. No response. I knocked again. Nothing. I leaned down, trying to see inside. The glare from the overhead lights made it almost impossible, but for a split second, I thought I saw movement, a slight shift. The hairs on my arms stood up. Something about this wasn't right. I went back inside, locked the door, and checked the monitors again. The car hadn't moved. Then the phone rang, a landline mounted on the wall. We rarely got calls this late. I hesitated, then picked up. "Speedy Mart, how can I help you?" Silence, then a low whisper. "Don't go outside again." My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" I asked, but the line clicked dead. I checked the cameras. Pump 3 was empty. The car was gone, but I never heard it start, never saw the headlights. It was just gone. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I imagined the whisper. Maybe the car had been there longer than I thought, and the driver left without me noticing. I went back to restocking the shelves, keeping an eye on the front door. At exactly 3:10 a.m., the power cut out. The lights, the coolers, the humming of the refrigerators, everything, except for the dim emergency backup light above the register. My heart pounded. I reached for my phone, no signal. Then I heard the back door click, the storage room. I turned slowly toward the monitor. The cameras were still on, running on battery backup. I cycled through them. Front entrance, empty. Aisles, empty. Back storage room. A man stood there, not moving, not facing the camera, just standing in the dark. I didn't hear him come in. The door was locked. I knew it was locked. I stared at the screen, frozen. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, head slightly tilted. Then he turned his head, not his body, just his head, slowly, looking up, as if he could see the camera, as if he could see me. I grabbed my keys and ran for the side exit. Hands shaking, I jammed the key into the lock and shoved the door open, bursting out into the cold. The parking lot was empty, no cars, no people. I ran to my car, fumbled with the door, and peeled out of the lot without looking back. I quit the next morning, never went back for my last check. A few weeks later, I checked the store's security cameras online. The manager had left remote access open. I clicked through the recent footage. Everything looked normal, until I checked 3:10 a.m. That's when I saw it. Pump 3, a black sedan idling, waiting. I used to work the night shift at a 24-hour diner just off the interstate. Quiet place, mostly truckers and night owls passing through. The kind of job where nothing ever happens, until one night something did. It was a slow shift. The only customers were a couple in a corner booth and a trucker nursing a cup of coffee by the window. The clock above the register read 2:17 a.m. when I noticed him, a man sitting at the farthest booth in the back. I hadn't seen him come in. I didn't hear the door chime, didn't notice him on the security cameras when I checked earlier. He was just there. He sat completely still, his hands resting on the table, his face turned slightly away from the dim overhead light. He wasn't looking at the menu. He wasn't looking at anything. I grabbed my notepad and approached. "Hey there, what can I get you?" Silence. He didn't react, didn't move. His hands, long fingers, pale skin, rested perfectly still on the table. I tried again. "Sir?" Nothing. I felt uneasy. Maybe he was asleep or drunk. I cleared my throat and stepped a little closer. "Sir, do you need a few minutes?" Slowly, he turned his head toward me, and that's when I noticed his face. Something was off. His skin looked too smooth, like plastic stretched too tightly over bone. His eyes were wrong, dark, deep-set, almost sunken, like he hadn't slept in years. His mouth twitched, just a little. I took a step back. The couple near the front laughed at something. The trucker stirred his coffee. The diner was normal, nothing strange. Just this man, sitting there, watching me. I forced a smile. "I'll give you a minute." Then I walked, quickly, back behind the counter. I checked the security monitor. Booth was empty. I looked up. He was still there. My stomach dropped. I checked the camera again. Nothing. Back to the booth. Still there. The coffee pot rattled in my hands as I poured a refill for the trucker. I couldn't stop glancing back at that booth, at that man who didn't exist on the camera. Then the door chimed. I turned, grateful for the distraction. A group of 3 guys in hoodies walked in, talking loudly. I grabbed menus, forced myself to act normal. When I looked back, the booth was empty, the man was gone. I checked the bathroom. Nothing. Looked outside, nowhere in sight. I went back to the counter, my hands shaking. The trucker looked up from his coffee. "You all right?" he asked. I forced a nod. "Yeah, just a weird night." He glanced at the back booth and frowned. "That guy still sitting there?" I felt my blood turn to ice. I didn't answer. I never worked another night shift again. I used to deliver food overnight for a small diner just outside of town. It wasn't a great job, but the tips were decent, and the roads were usually empty. I liked the solitude, the long stretches of highway, the occasional late-night customer, the quiet hum of the car beneath me. It felt peaceful, until the night I got an order that shouldn't have existed. It came in at 2:44 a.m., a single cheeseburger and fries paid in cash. Nothing strange about that, except for the address. The location was an old roadside motel on Route 6. I knew the place well. It had been abandoned for years, nothing more than a decaying structure collapsing in on itself. Windows shattered, doors barely hanging from their hinges. The kind of place kids dared each other to step inside but never actually did. I hesitated for a moment, double-checking the receipt. No name, no special instructions, just the address and the order. Maybe someone was squatting there. Maybe it was a prank. Either way, my boss didn't care. "If they paid, you deliver it," he said with a shrug. "If no one's there, keep the food." The drive took about 20 minutes. The motel sat alone on the outskirts of town, hidden behind a rusted old gas station that had long since shut down. As I pulled into the lot, my headlights swept across the front of the building. Most of the rooms were in total disrepair, their doors covered in rust and grime, but one stood out. Room 12. The door was slightly open, not wide, just enough to make me stop, enough to make my stomach tighten. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the warm paper bag in my lap. The air felt heavier than it should have, thick and stale. The neon "no vacancy" sign flickered weakly, buzzing in the silence. I stepped out, my breath visible in the cold night air. "Hello." My voice felt small against the emptiness. No answer. No movement. The only sound was the faint hum of electricity from the broken sign above. Every instinct told me to leave, but instead I walked toward the door, my footsteps crunching against the gravel. I knocked once. The door creaked open another inch. The room inside was dark, except for a single lamp on the nightstand. The bulb flickered, casting long, shifting shadows across the walls. The bed was perfectly made, the sheets crisp and untouched. No dust, no signs of decay. And on the nightstand next to the lamp sat a cheeseburger and fries, the exact same order I was holding. But this one was old. The bread was moldy, the fries shriveled and blackened. The grease-stained wrapper had started to disintegrate, curling at the edges. It had been there for days, maybe weeks. My stomach lurched. Then my phone buzzed. A new text. Unknown number. "Thank you for your delivery." The sound made my blood turn to ice. My hands were shaking as I looked back at the doorway, at the empty parking lot, at the decayed walls of a place that shouldn't have been occupied. I dropped the food and ran. I don't remember getting in the car, don't remember starting the engine, only the way my tires spun against the gravel as I tore out of the lot. I didn't look back. I quit the next morning. Never went back for my last check. A few weeks later, I drove past the spot where the motel had been. Nothing but an empty lot, overgrown with weeds and surrounded by a sagging chain-link fence. I pulled over, heart pounding, forcing myself to get out and take a closer look. The foundation was still there, charred, cracked, long abandoned. But there was no sign of any standing rooms, no room 12. As I turned to leave, a gust of wind kicked up dust from the lot, carrying with it the faintest scent of something burned. Grease, old fries, the sharp, unmistakable smell of a burger left too long in the heat. I got back in my car and never went near that road again.